Imagine investing a small fortune in a first-class ticket, only to be told to vacate your seat for someone deemed more important. What would you do? Ethan Carter stood by the expansive glass wall of his hotel suite on the 27th floor, gazing out at the sprawling skyline of New York City. The morning sun glinted off the skyscrapers, casting a golden hue over the bustling metropolis. His phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, a barrage of calendar reminders flooding in. Investor meeting at 3 p.m. board conference tomorrow. Press interviews lined up for later in the week. For a man at the helm of a billion-dollar tech empire, days like this were routine, predictable, efficient, until they weren't that he buttoned the cuffs of his crisp white shirt, slipped on his tailored navy blazer, and glanced at his watch. He had ample time to catch his flight. The hotel driver was waiting downstairs to whisk him off to JFK. It was supposed to be a straightforward trip to San Francisco, a quick hour in the air before diving back into the whirlwind of work. He grabbed his carry-on, a sleek black Samsonite bag that had accompanied him through every significant deal of his career, and headed out. The car ride was quiet. Ethan scrolled through emails on his tablet, firing off responses while sipping his coffee. The driver, a middle-aged man named Marco, attempted to engage him in small talk about the Knicks, but Ethan barely registered it. His mind was consumed with numbers, projections, and strategy slides. When the car pulled up to the terminal, Ethan looked up and offered a polite nod. "Thanks, man. Appreciate it." "Anytime, sir. Have a safe flight," Marco replied. Inside the terminal, everything moved like clockwork. TSA pre-check? No line. He breezed through security, barely breaking his stride. The first-class lounge was serene, filled with travelers nursing morning cocktails and scrolling through their devices. Ethan sank into a leather armchair, plugged in his headphones, and reviewed his pitch deck. To anyone observing, he was just another businessman in an expensive suit. No one in the room knew his name or that his company had just secured a $200 million deal. Ethan preferred it that way. He possessed wealth, influence, and power, but he never flaunted it. That wasn't his style. That he was halfway through a phone call with his CFO when a lounge attendant approached. "Mr. Carter, we're ready for boarding at gate 42. He ended the call, thanked her, and made his way to the gate. Everything was smooth, easy, or so he thought. Gate 42 buzzed with first-class passengers lining up early, eager to settle into their spacious leather seats before the rest of the plane filled. Ethan handed his boarding pass to the attendant, who smiled and said, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Carter." The plane smelled faintly of fresh coffee and lemon cleaner. Ethan stepped into the cabin, nodded politely at the crew, and made his way to seat 2A, a coveted window seat in the VIP section. He stowed his carry-on, slid into the seat, and powered down his phone. Taking a rare moment to breathe, he looked out at the runway, unaware that in just a few minutes, this calm morning would escalate into something far beyond his control. As he adjusted his seatbelt and reached for the in-flight magazine, a shadow fell across his aisle, and a voice said softly, "Sir, can I speak with you for a moment?" Ethan looked up. The voice belonged to a flight attendant, a woman in her late 30s with a polished uniform and neatly pinned back hair. She wore a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sure," Ethan replied, unbuckling his seatbelt and turning slightly toward her. "Everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine. Would you mind stepping into the galley with me for a quick conversation?" Passengers nearby glanced up, curiosity piqued. Ethan felt the weight of their stares. He hesitated for a moment, then stood, straightening his blazer. "All right," he said. "Lead the way." The galley was narrow, barely enough space for the two of them. The hum of boarding chatter carried from the cabin. Muffled by the curtain, the attendant quickly drew behind them. "Mr. Carter," she began, her hands clasped in front of her. "I hate to ask this, but we have a situation." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "A situation?" "Yes. We have a special passenger boarding today. He's requesting your seat. Seat 2A. Ethan frowned, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "My seat? The one I paid for." Her voice softened, as if lowering the tone would make it sound reasonable. "He's a VIP, sir. High priority on our list. We're asking for your cooperation." Ethan exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the counter behind him. He was an impulsive man. Years of business had taught him patience, strategy, control, but this didn't sit right. So, let me get this straight, he said, his voice calm but firm. You're asking me to give up the seat I paid for so some influential individual can have it instead? The attendant glanced down, avoiding his eyes. He's a major client for the airline, a very influential individual. Ethan processed this, blinking. I booked that seat weeks ago. Confirmed. What kind of priority outranks a confirmed first-class ticket? The attendant's professional smile flickered. We can move you to another first-class seat. 5C. Still premium. He stared at her, the hum of the aircraft growing louder in his ears. It wasn't about the seat. It was about the principle. The way she phrased it. The assumption that he'd just comply. I'll be honest with you, Ethan said slowly. This sounds wrong. Really wrong. And I'd like to know who this person is before I make any decisions. Before she could answer, a voice called from behind the curtain. Deep, confident. Is there a problem here? The curtain swept open, revealing a tall man in an immaculate charcoal suit mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair styled perfectly. He carried himself with an arrogance that didn't need words. The attendant immediately straightened. No problem, sir. We were just sorting out your seating requests. The man's sharp green eyes landed on Ethan. He offered a thin smile that felt more like a threat. Ah, he said, as if greeting an old friend. You're in my seat. Ethan stared back, saying nothing at first. The silence stretched heavy, but then his lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile either. The tension in that narrow galley was about to spill into the cabin for everyone to see. Ethan didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the man's, reading every ounce of entitlement in his posture. The stranger didn't blink, didn't waver. He simply waited like someone accustomed to winning. Your seat, Ethan said finally, his tone even. That's correct. The man adjusted his cufflinks as if this was a foregone conclusion. Seat 2A. That's where I sit every time I fly this airline. Ethan tilted his head slightly, unimpressed. Interesting, because according to my boarding pass, that's where I'm sitting today. The man chuckled softly, as if Ethan had made a joke. Look, let's not make this a big deal. They'll move you. You'll still be in first class. Everyone wins. Ethan's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in calculation. Everyone, or just you? The man's smile faltered for half a second. Then he turned to the flight attendant. Can we handle this, please? The attendant jumped in, her voice low and urgent. Mr. Carter, please. This gentleman is a Diamond Elite member. Very high priority. If you could just cooperate, we'll make sure you're comfortable. Ethan held her gaze for a moment before speaking. Tell me something. Does my loyalty not matter? Or is this about something else? Her lips parted, but no answer came. Ethan knew why. He'd seen this dance before. Same stage, different actors. Finally, he drew a slow breath and stepped back. Fine. Move me to 5C. But remember, you asked me, not the other way around. The man smirked, brushing past him into the cabin like royalty returning to his throne. Ethan followed silently, his steps measured. He could feel eyes turning as they walked down the aisle. Whispers floated through the air like static. When Ethan reached his new seat, he sat down carefully, placed his bag under the seat in front of him, and buckled in. He didn't slam anything, didn't mutter under his breath. Calm, controlled. But calm didn't mean unaffected. Inside, a storm was brewing. Not because of the seat, not really, but because of what it represented. Across the aisle, two passengers exchanged glances. One of them, a young woman with braids and sharp eyes, mouthed quietly, "That's not right." She pulled out her phone and opened the camera app, angling it discreetly toward the front of the plane. She hit record. The safety announcement played. The plane taxied to the runway. Ethan stared out the window as the engines roared to life. He said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. And somewhere behind him, a red dot blinked on a phone screen, capturing a story that was about to explode far beyond this cabin. But Ethan had no idea just how fast that little red that would turn his quiet surrender into a storm the entire world would see. As the plane climbed above the clouds, the cabin settled into that hushed calm only first class offers. The soft clink of glasses, the low murmur of polite conversation. But something was different. The air felt heavier, like everyone was pretending not to notice what had just happened. Ethan sat in 5C straight back, hands folded on his lap. He could feel the stares without looking. A few passengers glanced his way, then quickly looked down at their screens. Others didn't bother hiding their discomfort. The man, now seated in 2A, Mr. Diamond Elite, as Ethan had mentally labeled him, was already sipping champagne, scrolling on his phone like nothing unusual had occurred. His arrogance wasn't loud, but it was there, humming beneath the surface, that a flight attendant approached Ethan with a tray. "Would you like something to drink, Mr. Carter?" Her voice was sweeter now, almost cautious. "Water's fine," Ethan said, eyes still fixed on the window. She placed the glass down gently, then hesitated. "We really appreciate your understanding." Ethan turned his head slowly, meeting her eyes. His voice was calm, but there was weight behind it. "Do you?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. She gave a quick nod and retreated down the aisle. Ethan took a slow sip of water, letting the cool liquid steady the heat building inside. 2 rows behind him, the woman with the braids, the one who had started recording, kept her phone angled carefully. The red light blinked as it captured everything. The smug man in 2A, the awkward glances from the crew, Ethan's quiet composure. Her friend leaned in and whispered, "Are you seriously recording this?" She didn't look up. "Yep, and if you don't think people need to see this, you're part of the problem." Time crawled. The first-class service rolled on as if nothing had happened. Warm towels, champagne refills, gourmet snacks. But the whispers didn't stop. The man across the aisle leaned toward his wife and murmured something that made her eyes widen. The tension was a living thing now, coiling around every seat. Ethan glanced at the screen in front of him, pretending to scroll through movie options. He wasn't watching. He was thinking, measuring, not just the slight, but the system behind it. He'd faced moments like this before, but never so blatant. Halfway through the flight, the woman recording finally tapped her screen and stopped the video. She opened her Twitter app, typed a caption, and uploaded the clip, 10 seconds long. No sound needed, just the image of a man, black, composed, being moved so someone else could take his place. She hit post, AT first, nothing changed. People still sipped their wine. The engine still hummed. But on the ground, a spark had been lit, and by the time this plane touched down, that spark would become a fire. But even before the wheels hit the runway, subtle shifts began to ripple through the cabin, because people were starting to realize what was happening online. Somewhere over the Central Valley, as the plane cruised at 36,000 feet, the first notification popped on the woman's screen. One like, then another, then 10. Within minutes, the tweet was blowing up like wildfire in dry brush. Passengers in the back scrolling through their phones started whispering. They'd seen the clip on Twitter, retweeted by an account with hundreds of thousands of followers. Imagine paying thousands for a first-class seat only to be told to move so a priority passenger can take your spot. And imagine being him. By the time the plane reached its midpoint, the video had been shared more than 5,000 times. Comments poured in like rain. "Nah, this is wild. Name the airline. He handled that with way more grace than I would have. This is why we record everything. This right here." Ethan, oblivious, sat quietly. He hadn't checked his phone since takeoff. He didn't know that his name wasn't even in the caption yet. But it would be soon enough. Someone would recognize him. And when they did, the internet wouldn't just care. They'd explode. 2 rows ahead, the man in 2A ordered another drink, his voice carrying just enough for Ethan to hear. "Make it top shelf and keep them coming." The attendant laughed nervously and hurried off. Ethan exhaled slowly, closing his eyes for a moment. He wasn't angry in the way people expected. This wasn't about ego. It was about dignity. His and every person who'd ever been told they were less important. Back in row 6, the woman who posted the video refreshed her screen and let out a low whistle. "Girl," her friend whispered, "it's at 50,000 views already." She grinned, typing furiously. Update. His name is Ethan Carter, CEO of Apex Innovations. They moved him for some important passenger. Y'all see the problem? The comments went nuclear. They messed with the wrong one. Oh! He's about to own that airline by the time they land. PR nightmare incoming. The cabin crew sensed a shift. Whispered conversations behind the curtain grew sharper, faster. One attendant approached Ethan again, voice pitched low like a guilty secret. "Mr. Carter, would you like another drink? On the house." "No, thank you," Ethan said softly, eyes still on the clouds outside. She lingered for a beat, then left without another word. At that exact moment, in the airline's corporate office hundreds of miles away, a social media manager's screen lit up with a red alert. Trending topic number 3, airline name. She clicked the hashtag, and her stomach dropped. Within 5 minutes, the vice president of customer relations was on the phone. 10 minutes later, the CEO was awake, reading tweets that made his blood run cold. And 30,000 feet in the air, Ethan still had no idea the entire internet had chosen him as its newest hero. But he was about to find out, because the flight attendants weren't the only ones panicking now. The pilot had just been told to expect a very different landing than planned. The seatbelt sign dinged. The plane tilted slightly, beginning its descent over the glittering San Francisco Bay. For most passengers, this was a routine end to a flight. For Ethan, it was about to become anything but. He powered on his phone, planning to check emails before landing. As soon as the screen lit up, it buzzed violently. Text after text, notifications flooding in so fast the icons stacked on each other. "Call me ASAP. Ethan, what happened on that flight? You're trending everywhere." He frowned, unlocking his phone. Then he saw it. The tweet, the video, the comments, hundreds, then thousands. His own name in bold attached to words like disgrace, racism, and corporate greed. Ethan scrolled for 30 seconds before setting the phone face down on the tray table. His heart rate didn't spike. His voice didn't rise. Years of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals had taught him one thing: panic never fixes anything. But the crew, they weren't built for this. The lead attendant hurried down the aisle, her polished smile gone. She crouched beside Ethan's seat, like a lawyer prepping for a lawsuit. "Mr. Carter," she whispered urgently, "we understand there's been some activity online. Please know the airline will just land the plane." Ethan said calmly, not even looking at her, by the time the wheels kissed the tarmac. The situation had detonated. Outside the terminal, reporters clustered like vultures behind the security rope. Camera flashes popped against the glass. Passengers craned their necks to look out the windows, phones in hand, live streaming the chaos. As the plane taxied to the gate, the intercom chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as we allow a few passengers to deplane first." Everyone knew what that meant, and every phone in that cabin was aimed at Ethan when the flight attendant appeared at his row. "Mr. Carter, if you will come with me, please." He rose slowly, adjusting his blazer. The man in 2A, the so-called VIP, watched with thinly veiled curiosity, a smirk still etched on his face. Ethan met his eyes briefly, then turned away without a word. The moment Ethan stepped off the jet bridge, the world erupted. Microphones were shoved toward his face. "Mr. Carter, do you plan to sue the airline? Was this racial discrimination? Any comment on the viral video?" Security closed ranks, guiding him through the chaos. Flashes strobed like lightning. Voices overlapped in a frenzy. Ethan didn't answer a single question. Not why ET to AT the far end of the terminal. 2 men in dark suits waited, corporate executives' badges clipped to their belts. One of them extended a hand with a practiced smile. "Mr. Carter, let's talk." But even as they spoke, phones kept buzzing in every pocket because while this meeting was happening behind glass doors, the court of public opinion was already in session. And the verdict wasn't looking good for the airline. When that verdict dropped, it wouldn't just shake a company. It would end careers. The conference room smelled faintly of panic, fresh coffee, stress, and desperation mixed in the air. 3 executives sat across from Ethan, their faces tight, eyes flicking nervously toward the phones lighting up every few seconds. "Mr. Carter," the man in the middle began, clearing his throat. "First, let me say on behalf of the airline, we are deeply sorry for what happened. It was unacceptable, completely against our values." Ethan leaned back in his chair, hands clasped loosely in front of him, calm, controlled, like a man holding every card in the deck. "Unacceptable," he repeated slowly. That's an interesting word because when your crew asked me to move, they didn't look like they thought it was unacceptable. They looked like they thought it was normal. The man swallowed hard. This was an isolated mistake, a lapse in judgment. No, Ethan cut in, his voice smooth but sharp as glass. It wasn't a lapse. It was a choice. One you made before, probably 100 times, just not with someone whose name happens to trend in your stockholder meetings. Silence hung heavy in the room. One executive shifted uncomfortably. Another stared at his hands. Finally, the first man spoke again, his voice brittle. What can we do to make this right? Ethan's eyes softened just slightly, but his tone stayed firm. Start by taking responsibility publicly. Fire the crew that thought this was okay, and then make sure no one else ever has to sit where I sat today. By the time Ethan walked out of that room, the internet had already done half the work. Headlines screamed across every major news outlet. CEO removed from first-class seat sparks outrage. Airline faces backlash after discrimination allegations go viral. The crew involved was terminated before the day was over. The so-called VIP who took Ethan's seat issued a lifetime ban after reporters dug into his history of complaints and entitled behavior. The airline CEO released an official apology within hours, pledging sweeping changes to their policies. And Ethan? He didn't sue. He didn't cash in. Instead, he posted a single message to his followers at night. Dignity isn't a privilege. It's a right. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Speak up. Record everything. Hold people accountable. Change starts with action. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sits quietly in 5C, waiting for the right moment to remind the world that respect can't be bought or borrowed. So the next time you see something wrong, don't look away. Don't assume someone else will fix it. Pull out your phone. Ask the hard questions. Be the voice that turns silence into change. What would you have done if you were Ethan? Share your thoughts below. And if the story moved you, share it.